Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whisky podcast. I am joined today, and as always, by my good friend, my dear friend, my business partner, Jason Neal, Patrick Harris, Johnston Yellen. Hi, Jason.
Hello.
I decided to give you your full Sunday name this time and not miss about.
Thank you. Yeah. Makes me feel most comfortable. So I appreciate you taking care of my comfort this day.
Yeah. I thought I'd do that. You just came back from a trip, didn't you?
Yes. Just family trip. Me and my wife, friends, Uncle Carl, Moscow Jim, who we speak about early and often. We were in the Eagle Cap Wilderness, and Uncle Carl and his wife Lavina were celebrating 10 years of marriage. And so I took the Kilchoman 10th anniversary bottling, which was released in 2015, the year they got married. So they didn't expect it. I schlepped it up a mountain and we cracked it around the fire, and it was fantastic. So we probably polished off a half to 3/4 of the bottle in the weekend.
Okay.
There were other things we were drinking as well. So, Single Cask Nation Port Charlotte, Single Cask Nation Woodcut Series Laughing Frog. Those were enjoyed as well. So yeah, it was all to the good. There we go. What did you do while I was up a mountain?
There you go. I was up at Lake George with the Nolans, Michael and Bonnie Nolan.
Our Look at that.
Yeah.
I assume some whiskey was consumed there.
Yeah, I brought some of our newer retail bottlings, the Manickmore 17 in recharred red wine and the Balblair 17. I seem to have a liking for 17-year-old whiskeys, I guess.
You've always been there. When I first met you, Glenmoe was right around your 16 was the one you were drinking.
Yeah, that's actually true. Yeah, Glenmoe and Scapa 16, right?
Interesting use of actually true.
Because not everything you say is true.
Just a statement of fact.
I've got to clarify, right?
Might not be true in your world.
But it was a good time. This was our third year going out, spending time up at the lake. And it's just, just taking that time to breathe, right?
That's it.
Exhale.
That's exactly what I did. Exactly what I did in the Eagle Cap Wilderness. It was fantastic. Yeah. Well, speaking of getting out and about, we are going to bring in somebody all the way from Iowa. And just like you're prone to do, Joshua, where you ask questions about encyclopedic knowledge, have we interviewed anyone from Iowa before on One Nation Under Whisky?
I don't think we've ever interacted with anybody ever from Iowa. I'm not convinced Iowa's actually a state.
Well,
I take that back. But it's one of the 7 states I haven't been to, so I don't know that it exists.
I'm just waiting on Murphy coming in here and telling us that he is not from Iowa. That's what I'm waiting on. So whether he's going to be like, guys, you still haven't interviewed anyone from Iowa. I'm from, Pennsylvania. Who the heck knows? Let's bring him in and ask the man.
All right. Murphy Quint.
Hey there, guys.
we're at least certain that Cedar Ridge is in Iowa. Are you an Iowa man?
Yes, Cedar Ridge is indeed in Iowa, and I am very much an Iowan. Been here pretty much my entire life with a very small break that I spent in Colorado. But Iowa. In my opinion, I'm very biased, obviously, but most beautiful state in the United States, and most people don't know it because they just don't come here. So
coming in hot, I love it. Partly for East and West Coasters in America, and partly for our international audience. How do you describe Iowa? What could people expect if they ever showed up?
So. Beautiful rolling hills and open land, extremely friendly people, very good food scene here. and just an absolutely wonderful place to raise a family. I travel the country talking about whiskey and meeting with distributors and things of that nature. And I oftentimes get asked about Iowa, and people automatically assume it's a very flat state, which I would argue is incorrect. The a lot of farmland is man-made flat because it's efficient to farm. So, over the last couple hundred years, humans have kind of flattened certain plots of the state out a little bit, of course. But if you get off the interstate and you really explore Iowa, it's actually a really hilly state. If you get to northeast Iowa, incredible hiking, camping, wonderful rock. It's just a really beautiful state through and through. But something that kind of, when you get here, I think something that is a bit of an acquired taste is the open land. You kind of look around Iowa, and there's a lot of beautiful open land. And I think that people who, have spent a lot of time in cities at first, that it doesn't seem that attractive to them. But once you're here for a couple months or a couple years, it really starts to kind of get in your blood, and you really develop an appreciation for it. So, I'm super fortunate that I get to kind of bounce in and out of here. I get to spend some time in New York, and then I come back to my nice, beautiful, quiet Iowa. I get to go, spend some time in Colorado and go skiing with friends, and then I come back to my beautiful, quiet Iowa, and it's a nice setup that I have here. I'm very fortunate.
All right.
That's awesome, man. I love the passion from you, and especially your emphasis on it's quiet here. I like quiet.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, don't get me wrong. We also have really good cities. Des Moines is awesome. Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, there is a lot to do. And there's a lot of nightlife and stuff like that in those cities. But once you get out of them, it is very quiet. And, it is a cool place to look up at the stars at night and stuff like that. It's a really wonderful state.
Nice.
Can I ask potentially what might be the most important question that may be thrown at you this entire interview?
Shoot.
I was in Colorado this past October for a wedding, and I discovered Colorado pizza, right? Where you eat the pizza and then the crust is left over and you dip it in the honey, right?
Yes.
And I'm from Connecticut, which is the pizza capital of America, if not the world. So what is Iowan pizza? Talk to us about your pizza.
It's funny. We do not have like there's a Detroit style, or we don't have like a New York, Connecticut style that is an Iowan style pizza. There is a lot of really good pizza around, but there's a lot of variance in it. There's not really like one true style. I will say here at Cedar Ridge, we have our own style. We're pretty well known for our wood-fired pizzas, and they're awesome. We incorporate a lot of smoked meat. We're a big smoked meat state because we're very much an egg state. We have a lot of pork, a lot of beef here, and so a lot of pizza is going to be very meat-focused, especially our own wood-fired pizzas at Cedar Ridge. So, it's as far as the layout of the state goes, it's very very diverse. There's not really one true style here or a staple, but hopefully we can develop that. There's a lot of really good pizza restaurants that have opened up, especially in the city areas over the last couple decades, and hopefully over time, we can develop something that is a true Iowa style pizza.
There you go. There you go. I had to get that out there, Jason. I'm the regional pizza expert, so I gotta get that.
You're certainly the regional pizza guy. I would go that far.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we should probably talk about whiskey and maybe talk about Cedar Ridge. So I brought this up before. I think I may have brought it up on our tasting video, which we released a couple weeks back for our 5-year-old. Let me actually bring it up here for our viewers, which we were about to release. Actually, when this episode drops, we will have released this. This is our first collaborative bottling with you, which we're so excited for. This whiskey spent 3 years in bourbon and then 2 years in Sauterne, and this is a peated single malt.
Yeah.
But what I had mentioned in that tasting video was, I think it was last year, I was in Chicago. I was at the Nolan's house, right? We just mentioned this at the start of the
intro, yeah.
in the intro here. I was at Michael and Bonnie Nolan's house, and it was with Gil Matar, who was there.
Yes.
And Gil, right? He's the one who connected us, right?
Great man. Love Gil. Yep.
He's a lovely guy. And like Cedar Ridge, embarrassingly was new to me.
Yeah.
And he said, you've got to try this. And it was a single malt in a Merlot cask. And I've said it often, early and often, whiskey matured in wine casks is not my thing. It's not my bag. Jason says the same thing. And Gil, being the forceful man that he is, he says, "Nope, this is going in your glass. This is going in your mouth." and it was so good. It was presenting flavors that I simply was not expecting. And this is what I love about whiskeys that are new to me, distilleries that are new to me, is unexpected flavors, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, Gil, you've got to put me in touch with Cedar Ridge immediately. And so this is all new to me. And then once we announced that we're having discussions with Cedar Ridge, and then we told the nation that we're doing a collaborative bottling, the number of people who said we are so excited about this bottling, I was even more embarrassed that Cedar Ridge was new to me. Like Jason and I are in the whiskey industry, and I felt like a noob not knowing about Cedar Ridge.
Yeah, it's interesting on that front. You mentioned that you didn't know about us, and then Gil introduced you. I mean, that's something that we've dealt with a lot, and I mean, a part of that is because of our location. I mean, we're not in a state like Colorado or Texas that has a booming distilling industry. Where there's several million whiskey fans that are out supporting or anything like that. So because of that, word about us has had a tendency over the last 20 years to spread fairly slow. However, something that we're very proud of is that once people do hear about us, and give us a try for the first time, we've had a lot of similar reactions to what you described, where it's how did I not hear about these guys? This is really cool. And then they have a tendency to go down kind of a rabbit hole on what we're doing, and it's new and interesting to them. And so something that kind of at one point was a disadvantage, and that's flying under the radar. Now, today, as more people are starting to hear about us, it kind of works to our advantage because there's a lot of content and information out there about us now. And once people do get introduced, they kind of fall in love with it, and they want to go way deeper and see what they can find from us. So, like I said, it's kind of a disadvantage turned into an advantage at this point.
Yeah,
I want to bring you back to something you just said a second ago there, Murphy, which is 20 years. You just threw 20 years into your sentence. And I was looking at you being founded in 2003 and then Spirit first running in 2005. And then the first single malt came out 2013 or thereabouts. Is that about right?
I believe that is correct. Yeah, it's all a little fuzzy, but around 13 would have been when we started releasing our first single malts. Yep.
Right. And so I'm curious, at what point did you enter into this journey? Are you OG? Did you come along? Did you have a Cedar Ridge discovery for yourself? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, great question. And I had a very unique entrance into this industry. Very, very unlike most people. Most people really have to fight to get into this. It's a competitive industry because who wouldn't want to work in a whiskey distillery, right? There's a lot of people that want to, and because of that, it's kind of difficult to get your foot in the door at one of them and create an entry point. Well, in 2005, I was fortunate. I was in late middle school, or sorry, in 2005, I was in early high school. And my parents, they happened to open up a winery and distillery called Cedar Ridge. And so by default, whether I wanted to or not, I was kind of brought into the mix on this to help out. And early on, admittedly, I was definitely working there quite a bit, but it wasn't like my life's calling. It was more to help out my family, to get a little bit of gas money so I could hang out with friends. I was doing high school stuff back then, And, but as time went on, I really did develop a deep appreciation for it. And part of that came out of in 2009, I went to my first distillers conference. At the time, it was with ADI, and I met other distillers from around the country, and I was really, really interested, in what they were all doing. They kind of all spoke the same language that I was speaking. And in Iowa, I didn't really have any other distillers to network with. But when I went to Louisville for this conference, I met a whole bunch of them, and it was really cool. So anyway, when I was there, I met some people from Stranahan's Colorado Whiskey in Denver, and really loved what they were doing, the way that they were preaching their own product, and the way they were promoting it at this conference. And I kind of set a goal for myself that eventually I wanted to work there. And fast forward a couple of years, I moved out to Colorado. I did indeed get a job at Stranahan's, and that was my first official full-time role in the industry. I had been working with my family at Cedar Ridge before that, but I kind of break up my career into like three chunks. There was like the part-time entrance to the industry with Cedar Ridge, my full-time gig at Stranahan's, which is where I really fell in love with this and like learned what this industry can be and what this kind of career looks like long-term. That was all new to me. And then in 2014 is when I eventually came back to the family business at Cedar Ridge on a much more, structured basis, full-time basis with a director role. And I kind of pushed them, I'll say, into really going all in on whiskey. When I was in Colorado, that's when I was exposed to this whole whiskey boom that was unfolding, right? That hadn't really been seen in all these other states yet, but in Colorado, that was a very early state to this whiskey boom. And so, my family happens to have a winery distillery combination already fired up. And it's like, the people of Iowa are every bit as loyal as the people of Colorado. If we can put out a product that they show pride in and that they rally around, it could really go well. And so that's exactly what we did. We went all in on whiskey, and that was kind of my big early on input was forcing our hand to go around the clock whiskey production.
That's fantastic. That's I don't know if you noticed Joshua and I giving each other side eye when you subtly mentioned being in high school in 2005. We were well into our lives in 2005.
My wife was pregnant in 2005 with our first child, right?
Tamara and I were married in 2002, and so But that's a brilliant journey, Murphy.
Hey, thank you. No, I'm and now I'm 37 now, and I for the industry that, like, to your point, that can be pretty young, but I'm very fortunate to have developed kind of the knowledge and understanding of the industry this early in my career, just from having worked in every corner of it. I mean, from sales and distribution to marketing, obviously a huge production emphasis. That's what I do now and what I will do for the rest of my life, hopefully. But even, working in tasting rooms and things of that nature, I've had the opportunity to do all of that. So I have a really well-rounded knowledge of the industry, and that's extremely beneficial now, especially with how much competition there is and how many distilleries have opened up over the last handful of years.
Yeah, I had a question regarding the single malt, right? So if you opened up in 2003, started distilling in 2005, well, I guess this is a slightly deeper question than that, right? So 2003, you open up, 2005, you're distilling. So I imagine those first 2 years is getting the sort of winery part of this up and off the ground. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's affirmative. It was more so vineyard focused. So, I mean, before Cedar Ridge even became a winery distillery, I mean, those were all kind of in the works, but it was really about establishing this vineyard. And the vineyard is in Swisher, Iowa. That is where we are currently located, is where we originally planted some vineyards. But we needed to get those vines in the ground and let them take root and establish themselves before we could start producing wines and things of that nature. So the 2003 start was really very vineyard focused. It was in, late 2004 and early 2005 that we started really focusing on production and creating product that was eventually going to be for sale. So step one was cultivating land, getting it all set up for the vineyards that we're still operating on this day.
Okay. And so was the idea for distillation to go into brandy because you were growing fruit, or was bourbon, off the bat? Like, what were you thinking as far as distillation early days?
Yeah, so early days, the distillation role was actually more of a differentiator than anything else. And so what we were, my dad, my parents started the company, but my dad, he was kind of the original visionary on this front, and he is a big wine guy. I'm obviously much more on the whiskey side, but his background and passion is much more in wine. And so this was all really developed to create a vineyard and winery concept, and the distillery was more so to differentiate our winery. Why would people come to our winery versus wineries X, Y, and Z? Oh, well, we're also cranking out some fun spirits in very small, limited quantities, kind of a side hustle type setup, but it was meant to just be a small hook. And yes, we were going to do some brandies, and we did some rum as well, but vodka, gin. We did a lot of clear spirits because that's what you could produce today and sell tomorrow and not have to lay down. It was a sustainable business model at that point in time. And however, full credit to my dad. Eventually, he did have the realization pretty shortly after we started distillation, and that's, hey, we're in Iowa. We're in the corn capital of the world. We produce more corn here than any other state. As a matter of fact, Iowa produces more corn than most countries do. And, yet no one in the state of Iowa is producing a bourbon. That's crazy. And so that kind of light bulb moment happened, and we started putting away a lot more bourbon. And keep in mind, back then, a lot more to us was like a few barrels, we'll make a few barrels here and there. And even the whole business model back then was much more like, if I can make a barrel of whatever for X and sell it for Y, well, then that's profitable, and we can keep the lights on and keep going. It was all very, very small ball. But once that bourbon first came out, that was an absolute game-changing moment, because it was the first time we ever released something where there was a line out our door, where people came out and they were really like not only just supporting us because we were local and they wanted us to succeed, but they actually wanted the product. And that was the first time that we had ever really dealt with that. And I mean, once that happened, it was like, okay, we've got something here, and it's no longer we need to make a barrel or two, this month. It was like, let's actually create something that's a little bit more sustainable, that we can get aging inventory laying down, and our age is going up, and we're building a little bit more of a bourbon business as opposed to something that is kind of a differentiator to our winery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking on that very point then, Murphy, where did you all see the wine casks fitting in with distillate? Was there any idea there of flavors, complementary flavors? Was it, we need wood and we've got wood on site? What did some of that conversation look like?
Yeah, and I'll be fully transparent on that. I mean, early on, a lot of the experimentation, exploration we did, it was very cost and convenience focused. I mean, at that point in time, we emptied some wine barrels and we had them around, and we had some aged whiskey around. It's like, why not try it out and see what happens? And obviously, over time, that went really well for us. We were really happy with how the final flavor profile came together, and so we started scaling it up from there. Obviously, every now and then we'd have something that didn't really turn out, and then we'd tweak our processes accordingly as we move forward. And over a long period of time, leading to where we're at today, I mean, now we built something that's a little bit, it's kind of our niche now, is that we have so many different wine casks on site, primarily for single malt maturation, and we have many non-wine casks maturing single malt as well. But it really did start with our own American-style ruby port, using that for a finishing cask for our bourbon. That was the first finished whiskey we ever released, was a port cask finished bourbon, and it really worked well because it was also a very unique differentiator. There's not many winery distillery combinations in the United States in the first place. That's fairly uncommon. And the fact that we kind of created a bridge between the two of them, which has traditionally been a problem. Having both a winery and distillery, it's hard to market them at the same time. But if you can create these products that are kind of a bridge between those two different departments, it works really well. And consumers were interested in it now, or interested in it then, and have continued to be even more interested in it now.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In, just as a follow-up, in the interests of transparency, we have a very knowledgeable audience.
Yeah.
And what comes with that is they like to know the other side of the coin. And so a moment ago you hinted some things didn't work. Could you, given that you've moved away from those and you've had great success and award-winning releases, can you talk a little bit to those moments when you found a distillate that didn't work with a wine? Or could you put some leaves on those branches for us?
Yeah, we have a few barrels on the property. It's kind of funny because they've I'll explain why in a second, but there's been some inside jokes kind of built around them. But there are a few barrels that we produced that didn't really pan out. And what can you do with those? Well, obviously you want to modify your process in the future to be somewhat different, but what can you do with a barrel of whiskey that isn't panning out? I'll back up for a second. We about 10 years ago now, 9 to 10 years ago, we did a series of smoked malts on the single malt front. We did some mesquite malt. We did some like applewood smoked malt. We did a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Now, the mesquite malt in particular, I want to mention that there are a handful of American distilleries that do a really, really good job on that. Like Whiskey's Del Bac, Santa Fe Spirits, they've like really mastered that. Ours did not go well. Still to this day, we have I believe it's turning 10 in the next couple months. Couple barrels of that mesquite malt that are being aged in ex-bourbon, and they're just nothing to write home about. There's like the flavors are fairly light. They didn't really come through. You can get a little mesquite, but it's kind of bland and it's just kind of blah. So, not long ago, I had a group from Iowa. There's a group called the Iowa Whiskey Chasers. It's a group of like 5,000 people in Iowa that are just whiskey enthusiasts. And there's a subchapter that is all about single malt. And I had this subchapter out. We were tasting through a bunch of barrels, and we tasted that one, and everyone just kind of unanimously hated it. And which was fun. And I said, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do an experiment. Within the next few years, I'm going to make that barrel good. We're going to find a way, to make that good, just kind of out of principle and out of exploration, just to see what we can do. And so we've got a few different options on that front. I mean, in my opinion, you never really have to be done with whiskey, especially a single malt. You can always keep modifying it and manipulating it. So cask finishing can work wonders on stuff like that. I mean, I don't mean to imply that, cask finishing just needs to cover up whiskeys that you don't love, but you can utilize them to take a whiskey from where it's at currently into a completely different direction and see if you can channel its strengths. And so that's something that I absolutely intend to do. We could throw that in port, we can throw it in sherry, and just keep kind of moving around and modifying it. We can also blend it with some other barrels and see if we can kind of cover up some of its soft spots. And eventually you can shape a whiskey into something that is different than what it was. And so the long story short, I mean, when you have a barrel like that, first thing you want to do is modify your process so you don't do things the same way. But my point to all this is that I don't think you really need to give up on it either. You can use your own skill set and the tools at your disposal to take a whiskey from where it's at currently to a completely different direction. And I think that can be overlooked by a lot of people.
And when you're saying modify the process, is that on distillation? Is that on fermentation? Was that even on original peating levels? Does that vary by moment?
You can tweak all of that. And the hard part is that you really need to do it the scientific method. So you need to kind of tweak one thing at a time. And to further compound that is that, experimentation and distillation is complicated because you don't even know if the change you made is good until several years down the road when you can start doing some sensory analysis. So it is fairly complicated. But I would definitely look at yeast on that front. I would also look at mash percentages. Now, when you get into that, I mean, I was not on the team actually when this barrel was mashed. But when it was mashed, there's a chance that say 25% of it was mesquite malt and the other 75% was just standard 2-row pale. Well, I mean, you can tweak those percentages too. I mentioned that the barrel that we have, it's kind of bland. It doesn't really stand out. You can get the mesquite, but it's not overwhelming. Well, maybe we need to dial that up to more of a 50-50 or a 75-25. I mean, so there's a very obvious input right there. And then, there's also barrel. I mean, maybe it was a mistake to throw that in ex-bourbon. Maybe that needed to go in and new oak char 3 or something along those lines. So,
Yeah.
I would probably start with grain percentages and then maybe consider yeast before I changed anything else. But yeah, there's a number of inputs. The hard part is you only want to change one at a time. And, a lot of times when it comes to whiskey experimentation and exploration, you're kind of doing it for the next generation. You know what I mean? So, hopefully I learn things in my career that maybe one day my kids will want to pick up on and learn from.
And let me ask one more, and then Joshua, I'll give you the floor back.
Yeah.
But you've been so good here, Murphy, and so honest and so transparent. How about a moment to shine? Give us a story of a cask that just turned your head, and why. Well, what worked so for you?
Yeah. The obvious answer to me, it would be kind of my first experience and first love with cask finishing, which I'm all about. It would be Amontillado sherry. We early on, I think probably 2017, 2018, they were some of the first barrels I ever filled as at the time head distiller. We brought in some authentic sherry butts from Jerez, Spain. These are, not just conditioned casks. These are like the monstrous 132 gallon when converted from liters, big old, just monstrous casks. And when they showed up, first of all, I was just wowed by them. I had never dealt with a cask of that size before. I had never seen anything like it. So immediately I had just fallen in love with them. But the way that our distillate is, we have a very clean distillate. And, when I say that, I don't mean that there are clean distillates and there are gritty distillates, and both of them are great. They both have strengths and weaknesses. Our style of distillate is very clean, and we distill, to about 142, 143 proof. And so it comes out fairly clean. And the way that it works with these sweeter white wine casks works really well. And the Amontillado sherry that we originally got, the first round that we ever did these buys on, was actually a sweet Amontillado as opposed to a dry Amontillado. And the way it worked with that single malt was just incredible. It really shined. And so ever since then, I've been just an absolute Amontillado fanboy. Anytime I can get my hands on Amontillado casks, I'm doing it, just because I know from experience that it works so incredibly well with our particular style of distillate.
That's brilliant. Really brilliant to hear. Made me think of Miguel Martin, Joshua, when we met him. Did you go to the same place in your memory?
I went there, and then I went to the Isle of Arran 15-year-old anniversary cast, the 11-year-old, right? Oh man,
we both went to the same places.
So speaking of process, I'm curious of your overall process between the different spirits that you make to get to your final product. Can you talk about that and how you differentiate from, not just how you differentiate from product to product, but how you got there?
So I'll kind of go over our process, and then I can back up. When it comes to our production process, we utilize basically everything the same way for all different types of our whiskey. When I say that, I'm referring to single malt, bourbon, and rye. We mash it all on the exact same equipment, which is fairly uncommon and kind of a logistical nightmare, to be honest. But we have a standard mash tun. We recently, about 3 years ago, switched from a lauter tun over to a mash tun, but we're still essentially lautering. I'll get to that in a second here. But we use a mash tun. From our mashing process, once we've got our conversion, we actually send everything to a mash filtration system, which is going to work very similarly to lautering. And just instead of, when you're lautering, by what you're doing is you're letting gravity chase that liquid through the bed of grain, and then transferring that over to fermenters to do an off-grain fermentation. Well, still to this day,
like a clear wort then?
So it's not going to have grain. It's not going to have all husks in it. It's going to be just, the brown liquid that you're creating from the process. But we still to this day do an off-grain fermentation and distillation. However, instead of letting gravity feed it through the grain bed, we're introducing compression. So we're sending it all to a mash filtration system where it puts a squeeze on it, and we're going to get a better yield out of it. And it's going to happen a little bit more efficiently than letting gravity do it. We're actually cutting like an hour out of every mash by utilizing this and getting a much better extraction. And so we're doing that. We're doing an off-grain fermentation and distillation. We then do about a 4.5 day average, at least on our single malt. It's about a 4.5 day average fermentation, in which after that we double distill everything. We have 2 Carl pot stills specifically for whiskey. We have a couple other stills for other products, but our Carl pot stills, we have an 800-gallon alpha still and a 200-gallon finishing still, and that's where we make all of our cuts, heads, hearts, and tails, things of that nature. So by the end of the process, regardless of which style of whiskey we're producing, it's going to come off the still at a roughly 142, 143 proof. And from there, we dilute down to 120. Across the board, our cask entry proof is 120, and that's regardless of whether we're putting single malt in ex-bourbon or bourbon in New American Oak Char 3. We standardize on 120 proof, at least for the most part.
Okay. And how did you get there?
Yeah. How we got there, I mean, American whiskey in general, talking about production process and stuff is interesting in America because there are so many distilleries that are new. I mean, we talked about how we're 20 years old now, and we were all kind of talking about how that's kind of a feat. That's pretty old for an American distillery, which is crazy because I mean we're still somewhat of a startup business being 20 years old, and so when you're doing that as a distillery, I mean a lot of times the process that you kind of settle into, at least at the very beginning, is going to be a factor split between the process that you want and the process that you can afford and just necessity in general. So, I mean, we have modified our equipment probably 3 or 4 times over the last 20 years, just kind of modifying things to the point where we're at now. But I mean, a lot of it rooted out of just necessity. I mean, the off-grain fermentation distillation thing, now that's today, that's something that we very much embrace. And it's a strategy that we would not move forward without. For example, if we built a new production facility somewhere else and put millions and millions of dollars in it, we would maintain that process because we have learned how to work with it and create something that we're really proud of. However, I mean, that process actually started out of necessity. We're in a rural distilling environment. We cannot have everything sitting on grain, especially when it's going to have to all go in a holding tank once we're done with the distillation. It's all going to have to go in an underground holding tank with the grain still mixed in and things of that nature. And it's going to cause a bunch of problems for us. So out of necessity, early on, we started doing a separation and distilling off grain, which, when we started really doing single malt, that eventually became a huge advantage for us. But, bourbon off-grain fermentation and distillation is fairly uncommon. So once again, this is another example of something that originally was kind of a disadvantage, but it turned into an advantage. And now it's kind of a good differentiator for us, is that we're making, at least on the bourbon side of things fairly different than how they do in traditional environments such as Kentucky.
Yeah.
Nice answer.
Yeah, no, that's great. One of the questions that keeps on percolating, when we talk to Scottish producers, there's an easy question for a newer distillery, people looking to create new spirit. And the easy question is, do you have an inspiration? And they can say, from an environmental standpoint, they can say, well, we like this distillery's stills, we like this spirit style, and you can target a very specific spirit style. But once you're in America, you have different climate zones, you have different grains, you've got a host of challenges. But I wonder, with your time at Stranahan's, did any of your time at Stranahan's inform your single malt?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, for the most part, I've tried to create a single malt that's very different from them. I mean, both out of
totally is different. Yeah. I mean, just to be clear, I don't think your single malt is anything like Stranahan's. But I'm curious, your time there, what did you bring from Stranahan's to Cedar Ridge, I guess, is sort of the larger question.
Yeah. And so, it has been very important for me, just out of respect to them, because I think so highly of Stranahan's, and it's a distillery that will forever be very important to me, just because that's kind of where I cut my teeth and got started. I didn't want to, do anything that would even kind of replicate their process. But as far as, as far as what I learned there, I mean, the biggest thing I took away from them on what we could do is how to create one of a kind limited stuff. For example, they came out with their Stranahan Snowflake, and that was like the first American style single malt that like people would camp out overnight for, right? I mean, that was just this huge thing. They were wildly successful for it, and more so than anything else, I learned how to create these cool one-offs that really get local appreciation, get people to rally around them. So more so what I learned there would have been on the marketing and brand development side of things. As far as the production process goes, I mean, I truly tried to differentiate just out of respect. And in addition to that, I am traditionally more of a Scotch single malt guy. At least that's like where my original love for single malt came out of, was exploring different Scotches. Primarily, they start out in their initial maturation in ex-bourbon casks. And, obviously Stranahan's is new oak, and a lot of American single malts are new oak. My dad and I, both being on kind of the Scotch side of things, we wanted to do something that was ex-bourbon, aged in our own ex-bourbon casks, and go that way. So, I learned a lot from them, but it was more on like the brand development and marketing side of things as opposed to process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got one last question for you, and then I'll hand it over to Jason. American single malt, obviously, you've been doing it since 2013. It recently got its own status. It's its own. Why can't I think of the word?
The same question here.
Could be.
You can ask him about ratification.
No, I'm not going to ask him about ratification. No, it's not about ratification.
Okay,
it's more about the consumer, right? Bourbon makes sense. Americans understand bourbon.
Yep.
They sort of understand rye. I think Americans understand Scotch whiskey for the most part. I wonder what your challenges are trying to explain American single malt and what successes you may have seen.
That's been a huge challenge for us over time. I mean, it's still a bit of a challenge for us now, but I mean, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was like an impossible challenge. And, you kind of remind me of something I haven't thought of in a while. And that's originally to combat that. You mentioned Americans understanding bourbon and rye, but not necessarily what single malt is. Even though they might understand Scotch, they don't necessarily know single malt. And that definitely was the case in 2018, 2019. And one thing that we did to combat that, all of our whiskeys back then, they were Cedar Ridge bourbon, Cedar Ridge rye, Cedar Ridge single malt. I mean, just very American style label where you can read the brand name from all the way across the room. That's just kind of how American labeling works. Well, people were not understanding what our single malt was. And we had a lot of Cedar Ridge fans that were developing, especially locally. And, they try our bourbon and they try our rye and they love it. But then they try the single malt and they'd expect it to be kind of along the same lines as those. And obviously, I mean, our ex-bourbon aged single malt is not going to taste anything like our bourbon or rye. It's just going to be wildly different. And so that was actually, it was problematic because people went into it expecting one thing and they were getting something very different. And even if it's something of quality, if you throw a curveball at your consumer like that, it's going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. And so one thing we did very, very quickly, and I think we did this in 2018, 2019, gosh, it all blends together now. But we rebranded our single malt from Cedar Ridge single malt to the quintessential American single malt, and we changed the packaging and everything. I mean, for anyone viewing, you can kind of see it here. Very different packaging. The type on it is a lot. It's smaller. It's flowier. It's more elegant. It's got a lot more detail on what's in the bottle. Is a little bit more information on the process behind it and the casks utilized and stuff. And the reason we did that is because it's going to now be a little bit more easily associated with things like Scotch. We knew, to your point, a lot of Americans understood Scotch, but just not American single malt. So, well, let's make our American single malt appear a little bit more Scotch-like, if you will. And that way people, as far as perception goes, they can just make natural assumptions on what that's going to taste like and have that be a little bit more accurate than in the past. So that was a huge help for us. And then it also allowed us to kind of create a foundation for brand development. Now, instead of trying to market Cedar Ridge Bourbon, Cedar Ridge Rye, and Cedar Ridge Single Malt, we've got our Cedar Ridge stuff over here, and we're marketing quintessential American Single Malt on the American Single Malt front, and we just completely separated them, and it's worked extremely well on that front. But yes, it has been a major obstacle to overcome. Education has been incredibly important. When we do tastings and pairing events, I'm always trying to educate people on the process, on the category in general, on the pros and cons, the differences and the beautiful elements to single malt versus bourbon, things of that nature. You really have to focus on education, and then you can kind of start converting people into the category. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is the perfect lead into what I was going to ask you, which is, did you find ratification move the dial for you? Have consumers responded to ratification and the creation of a category?
Yes. I mean, I do think the answer is yes. However, I think it's a bit of a wave that it's going to happen. And I think we're kind of in the early stages of the wave. So, I mean, one thing you got to keep in mind is the way that this industry works now. Whiskey can be kind of an intimidating category to get into and to learn about from like a hobby standpoint. If you're new to the category, you're kind of afraid to say tasting notes. You're afraid to say which bottles are good and bad. A lot of times you're going to let someone else do that for you until you've kind of established a base level in the category, until you kind of understand whiskey a little bit better. There can be a little bit of snobbery in it, and that kind of intimidates, I think, the people that are new to it. And so the way that this all works now is there's a lot of influence. There's literal influencers, a huge social media presence. And then in the retail environment, there's things like, their store associates and then signage up in the retail environment. Well, stage one after ratification is to, in these retail environments, you finally have some American single malt signage. So they know where to put the product and consumers know where to find it. And then on the social media front, what this ratification did is it created a whole wave of whiskey influencers talking about American single malt, because it was some new content that they could share. It was things that they could dive into to their followers. And so there's a lot more promotion because of all that. And that promotion is being passed on to people they're following those influencers. And now they're going to retail environments and they can actually find the product. That was such a huge problem was, we'd send people to go get quintessential at a liquor store in whatever state it might be. Well, it's anyone's best guess on where they're going to be able to find it, even in a liquor store. It might be in the bourbon section. It might be in the Scotch section. A lot of times it'd be in the other section, which is a huge problem. And so, now because it's an actual category, we're starting to see more, American single malt whiskey sections. And yes, we need those sections to grow and more bottles to be on them. But at least there's like a little bit of a flag that a consumer can look for once they've been pushed in that direction to go and find it. So to your question, I mean, I think there's still a lot more upside to come. I think we're in the early stages of it. But yes, I would argue that it is working, and it is working well. It's just the very early stages.
Nice. Is there, for you as Cedar Ridge, and you have bourbon and you have rye and you have the quintessential single malt, how do you feel about your product being in three different parts of a store? Would you like to have Cedar Ridge in one part of a store, or do you benefit from being spread through the store?
Yeah, it's tough. And that kind of varies from market to market. I mean, there was a point where specifically in Iowa, when we were entirely Iowa based, which was quite a while ago, where, you wanted to create a little bit of a billboard effect. People walk into a liquor store of any type and you want to have a bunch of Cedar Ridge products all right next to each other because it's kind of a natural billboard and it pulls their attention towards it. As time goes on and as you establish your brand a little bit more, you don't necessarily you still want to get a billboard if possible, but you want your products to be in the right locations where people can look for them and find them. There's a little bit of a credibility thing there. A lot of times if you've got all your products smashed together in one section, it doesn't really make sense for a rye and a single malt to be with the bourbon and a bourbon section. A lot of times that can imply that you're kind of new, or you might be local. And so they're putting your local products all together. Well, as time goes on, you develop a little bit more of a brand that can almost make you look a little bit smaller than you are. And you want people to find your rye in the rye section, your single malt in the single malt section, and your bourbon in the bourbon section. But I mentioned it kind of varies market to market now. In a place like, for instance, Florida, we're not super well established in Florida. Until we are established, it might be kind of nice to have them all side by side again to once again repeat that billboard strategy. Okay. So it's kind of a cycle, if you will. And there are pros and cons to all of it. But we've reached the point, at least in our home state of Iowa, where we don't necessarily want them together. As a matter of fact, we've got, I won't name any names, but with like bourbon, we want our bourbon next to a very specific competitor so that a consumer has to make a decision between those rather than having our products next to each other and a consumer has to decide which of ours they're buying. Yep.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, very good, Murphy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's thorough. I like that. You've thought about this.
Not only thought about for 20 years.
Are you outside the U.S.? Do you have distribution in UK, Europe?
Yeah, and I mean it's before I make it sound all impressive. It's pretty sparse. I mean it's nothing significant, but we do distribute or we do export to about 5 or 6 different countries. Now that's in different formats and under different brand names. I mean, some of it is like Cedar Ridge bourbon going to Canada, for example, but we also do some collaborative products, like we make a whiskey for the band Slipknot, which is an Iowa-based band, and we've exported that to Japan, to Lithuania. Believe it or not, like we've exported that to a few different places. Different products are going to different places. We haven't gotten to the point where we're dedicating resources to developing any particular market abroad yet. And that's something I very much look forward to. Right now, it's more of an on-demand situation. If we've got a distributor in, say, Japan who wants to bring in a pallet of one of the products, we'll work with them and establish that. But as far as going to a market abroad and developing new meat and having actual employees stationed over there frequently, that is not something that we've established yet.
Okay. Now I have to think of what Slipknot song to play underneath what you were saying there.
That's a tough one.
Oh my gosh! While we still have you here, Murphy, can we talk a little bit about our collaboration? Can we return to that beautiful bottle and again for the nation who are here in the US and have access to this? Can you talk about the peated malt there? Can you talk about how Sauterne came to be? Mm-hmm. Do you want to weigh in on, do you say Sauterne or Sauternes? This is a back and forth Joshua and I've had in other episodes. What can you tell us about it to share with the nation?
So to kick it right off, I say Sauterne. And how did that... Yeah, there you go. I will say though that I worked with 55 people here, and it's mixed. Everyone says a little bit. Everyone pronounces things differently, but I say Sauterne. So how did that come to be? Well, I mean, we have once again, we've really kind of put a staple on wine cask finishes. And, there's a lot of people out there that either love that or hate that, but everyone's kind of got to find their thing to hang their hat on. And at Cedar Ridge, particularly with our single malt, that is something that we're really focusing on. We do a lot of cask finishing, primarily in wine. So whenever there's an opportunity, I work with many different barrel brokers. And whenever there's an opportunity to bring in wine casks that we haven't worked with yet, I'm always going to bring in, 1 or 2 just to try it out and see how it goes. Well, early on, Sauterne was one that once again, kind of like that Amontillado sherry that I talked about earlier, it worked really well early on. And any of these sweet wine casks, they just work so well with our particular style of distillate, and it just nailed it. And so after that, I mean, I knew that is something that we wanted to increase the amount of barrels we were bringing in for cask finishing on that front. And so now that's kind of a staple in our portfolio. I try to bring in between 8 and 12 finishing casks of Sauterne every single year. And then, primarily, almost entirely, we've been filling them up with our standard unpeated single malt. Just a few years ago, I kind of made an impulse decision to try filling some up with peated malt. And it was just in my opinion, an absolute home run. And that has led to what we're working together on. So the distillate that was utilized for this particular collaboration was, believe it or not, Baird's heavily peated malt. That is the peat that we use, is Baird's.
Yep.
And we, aged that in ex-bourbon originally. And I've always been a fan of how our peated malt ages in ex-bourbon. Well, once again, I kind of had these a nice shipment of Sauterne barrels come in, and I saw an opportunity to experiment with a little bit of peated malt in one or two of them, as opposed to just all the standard 2-row pale, and the rest is history. I'm really happy with how it came together. It is something that I look forward to doing more of in the future, and I'm glad that you guys got this one.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you for allowing us access to such a rare cask. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so when people when I'm sending samples off to people, it's always tough to send certain ones out. I was talking with a fellow distiller about this very recently. The people in our roles who we're in like the master blender role, where you oversee a production and you also have a lot to do with like education on the brand and promotion of the brand. Well, it creates a very conflicting, internally conflicting situation where you develop some certain barrels where they'd be awesome on the market, but but you also don't want to sell them because you love them so much. But that you need them to go out there, and so there are a few barrels around the property for I think everyone in my position where they're hard to part with. But working with the both of you, Single Cask Nation, was such a good opportunity to have this one hit the market, and I'm really glad that it's in your portfolio.
Man, that really blows us away when people use words like that, Murphy. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
we're honored to collaborate.
Really appreciate that. I don't remember if we mentioned this in the tasting video or maybe we just talked about it privately with some people, but this really is a collaborative bottling. This isn't just us bottling a cask of whiskey from a distillery. And I remember when we first started our conversation about what should this look like, my question to you was, or my challenge to you was, why don't you take a look at what's in your inventory and pick out a set of casks that really rock your world? What do you think are some of the best that you got? And that's what that's what I really like about this. That it's not just our favorite selection; we're picking from your favorite selections too. So it really is a wonderful collaborative effort here.
Very well said.
Well, and very much to Murphy's point, if you want to bring up the bottle again, right? Yeah, there's that Single Cask Nation brand that you can see from across the room, and there's the Cedar Ridge name front and center, right? We're in this together. This has to work for both Single Cask Nation and Cedar Ridge, and be delivered to the nation. So it's a beautiful whiskey. And we've been so excited to share the rise of American single malt whiskey with the nation. And so to finally have our first and not our last Cedar Ridge is just a thrill, an absolute thrill.
The other thing that I'll put out here, now this is a wild turkey that we bottled, but what you couldn't see on there was this logo that we put, which just says Spirit of Collaboration. Right, that's really important to us. It is. Awesome. It is a collaboration. So
absolutely, it is. Yeah.
We really thank you, Murphy.
Thank you guys. It's awesome opportunity to work with you for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, likewise. We've got one final get out of here question. Did you have another question, Jason? Before we?
No, I'm good. I was excited to discuss the the bottling with
Yeah.
the man himself.
The man himself. Oh, you know what? You mentioned Baird's heavily peated. Was there a specific ppm? Do you remember the ppm on that?
I've got that in my record somewhere off the top of my head. I do not recall, unfortunately. Yeah.
All right. We'll just say 389, more than Octomore. That's what we'll tell you.
Well, more than Octomore. Yeah.
Legal disclaimer entered here.
Yeah, definitely.
So here we are. 2003, you're incorporated. 2005, you started distillation. 2013, you started single malt. 2020, COVID hits. Here we are, 2025. What does the next 5 years look like for Cedar Ridge?
Yeah, it's complicated. I've been talking because our 20-year anniversary is coming up. That's been a topic that's been brought up a lot lately. And, where it's all going, it's really hard to predict right now. There's a lot of good things happening in whiskey, and there's a lot of complicating factors in whiskey. There's a lot of distilleries that have opened up over the last 20 years. And meanwhile, in the distribution channels, they've really shrunk. There's been a lot of consolidation between distributors. And so what we've developed is a very large beginning of the funnel of distilleries and producers out there, and a very narrow end of the funnel when it comes to distribution. That creates a lot of complications. So, where is this all going? I don't entirely know. I can tell you that 5-10 years down the road, what I will be proud of is if we maintain the staff that we have in particular. The staff is our team here, from our production operators to our team of directors throughout the entire company. It is what's gotten us here. It is a true differentiator for us. They're so talented. If we can maintain that and then stay true to our current vision, which is putting Iowa on the map for whiskey production, which is being both a winery distillery combination and embracing that. If we can maintain all that stuff and stay true to that vision while things are looking kind of tough, I will consider that a major success. So, outside of that, it's tough to predict where it's all going to go. But I just want to stay true to what we are, who we are, and where we're at right now.
Yeah, I love that. I applaud that. And I wish you the very best of luck. When it comes to people, we're here to protect them. So good luck with that, Murphy.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, love chatting with you guys anytime. This has been a lot of fun, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
Cheers.
Yeah, we got to get out to the distillery. Yeah, next time at the distillery.
Right.
Next time at the distillery. Well, gotta get you guys out here for sure. Yeah.
All right. Cheers, Murphy.
Hey, cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers.
Wow. What a great conversation that was.
That was excellent. Absolutely fantastic. As much as we gave the side eye on 2005 for him being in high school and us, beginning our lives. What a journey for him, though, to have been there from high school and making gas money to then going on. And I also loved hearing going off to Stranahan's and then coming back to the family enterprise. Like that's wonderful. I remember hearing that around Glenfarclas. The idea was you would go and, spend someone else's money on your education and then come back to the family.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I really appreciated the final answer too. I think about these past 9 years of asking a similar question. What do these next 5-10 years look like? And until somewhat recently, the answer has been rosy. And here we are in more difficult times. And there was no sugarcoating. It was like, we're looking at reality and we're going to stick to our ethos and we're going to protect our people and we're going to do what we can to keep things chugging along. And the transparency was there. And I really, really, really appreciated that. I thought that was very cool.
No, agreed wholeheartedly. And all the way back to something you'd said at the very beginning of today's episode, by the time this episode drops, we will have launched the whiskey we were just talking about. We're recording this before launch. So we have our own little, what do the next week hold, the next 7 days, the next 14 days, we'll be, we'll be putting that Cedar Ridge front and center, along with Balcones, along with New York Distilling.
Yeah.
All of these distilleries mean so much to us, and working with them means so much to us. And getting to spend time with a good lad like Murphy is a real treat. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah. So I'm just going to pop this back on the screen here. So there it is, our Cedar Ridge 5-year-old. There's 150 bottles being put up for sale. And there may be bottles left by the time this episode drops. There may not be. We don't know. It is 61.4% ABV. So you just go to singlecasknation.com and you can grab your bottles. I'm going to put the S at the end there because no one buys a bottle. You buy bottles. So that way, you have a backup, right? Once you're done. And I think that's, you know what I wanted to say, Jason? If you haven't already, listeners and viewers, right? Because this is an episode that people get to listen to with their eyeballs. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, so you can watch our YouTube videos, our tasting videos, our One Nation Under Whisky podcasts, all of that stuff. Just click the little button down below and you can subscribe. Click the little bell below and you'll be alerted. Danger, Will Robson, all that stuff. You'll be alerted of new episodes.
A Lost in Space reference for the kids.
Right? The kids, they'll know it.
They don't even know the new reboot with the guy from Friends.
Anyway, subscribe. You'll be glad you did. I'll be glad you did. Jason will be glad you did. I'm sure Murphy will be really happy that you did too. I just put words in his mouth. He'll be happy that I did that. All right. Let's get out of here, Jason. I think that's what we need to do.
Excellent. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. Here's an empty glass.